Hello, my name is Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, and we've come to another paper recital. And in fact, this time we have Kate Pruitt with us, who's a very, very dear member of our soul family. And this time she's chosen a different paper in a series of, I believe, 4 papers, but she'll tell you what it is. But let me go ahead and here quickly tell you how you can get to these papers, and then we'll give the podium to her. First of all, I wanted to tell you this. Anytime, I'm very easy to find. So if you just go to Google and just type my name, you're going to find pages and pages and pages of stuff. And pretty much any paper you want, you can find it. So one way to do it is Google. And even if you go to the last page, you have an option to get more, maybe 30, 40 pages of stuff that you can find. Virtually, you can find anything you want. So that's one thing I wanted to tell you. Google, okay? The other thing is that you can, by the way, you can find this particular paper, which she's going to read today, and it's called A Tale of Two Sons, Part 3 she's chosen, which talks about the cosmological dimensional structures of the Nebadon Universe. There's a series of 4 papers at this point, and may add to it, but it will basically tell you about the Nebadon Universe, the harmonic universes, the dimensionals, the parallel dimensions, all this kind of stuff. Anything you want to know about the dimensions and the edifice or the system, the structure of the Nebadon, it will tell you about it. Okay, and here you can find this in WordPress.com. And here it is. And if once you go to WordPress.com, any paper you find, you're going to find a form of a menu like this that you can just go in there and click on it and read papers, say on karma or cosmos or whatever. I mean, this particular case, for example, is in cosmos. So if you go in there, there are loads of papers in there you can choose. And this is, for example, the particular paper that she had chosen. But there are many, many papers. Another way of finding these papers, most of them are, not most of them, but some of them, about 140 papers, I think, probably, are on academia.edu. And if you can just type academia.edu, you can go to there and you can search for my name, and a list of a bunch of papers come in, click on it, and you find a particular paper, which is again, this is the particular one, okay? So one other thing I wanted to tell you this is that we will find the series of these YouTube, videos on YouTube. As you can see, we've already got quite a few of them done, and we're adding to the list. So if you go to the YouTube channel that's called the Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi channel, appropriately, you will find a list of these. And if you click on it, you can go to that particular video. Finally, I wanted to tell you this, that, you can find me on the, what is it, the Facebook, and I'm on Facebook, and on the Facebook, I publish a bunch of slides that can be very helpful and quick way of getting information that you want. We are constructing a new website, which is going to be a comprehensive library of everything that I've done, and hopefully that will be ready fairly soon. But with all that information, by the way, wherever you've watched this video, you're going to find a link to this particular paper, which either goes to academia or goes to WordPress.com. So you don't even have to worry about it. But everything that I told you, Googling, going to academia, WordPress, is just to get you to all kinds of other things. So in case you're interested. Okay, so basically, let me see. All right, so with that introduction, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to give the screen to Kate, who will recite the paper for you. And then I will be here in case there are questions. We will have a discussions and the issues that she would like to pose, questions she would like to pose. So here's Kate Pruitt.
Thank you. This paper is called A Tale of Two Suns, Part 3, on the main cosmological dimensional structure of the Nebadon Universe by Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi, Ph.D. The abstract. An account of the main dimensional structure of the Nebadon Universe has been presented. It is explicated that being situated practically at the edge of the cosmos, the Nebadon Universe, the densest of what was co-created to be part of the first super universe, or higher heaven within the God's worlds. Accordingly, Nebadon exists within the first 12 main dimensions of the cosmos, in which a total of 356 such non-singular dimensions may be defined. It is further elucidated that the main dimensions of the cosmos may be defined via discretization of the cosmological vector of time that is commensurate with discretizing the angle of spin of the fundamental quanta of energy, as it is the energetic quantum spin that defines the very advent of time. Accordingly, Nebadon may be perceived as a hologram within the cosmos that consists of a series of hologram within hologram referred to as space-time dimensions, each of which is created via projection of light of certain characteristic frequency and light quotient or color. Think of Nebadon as a prism that divides the threefold founder flame composed of the emerald blue aqua ray, the gold order ray of gold, and the amethyst order of violet magenta ray, all together describing the Trinity of the Godhead that manifests as self-similar fractal aspects of the offspring of itself, giving rise to the dimensional structure of Nebadon. Accordingly, such light beings that are originally of fully crystalline or crystal Sophia angelic orifem pedigree emanating from the 7 higher heavens, or more specifically dimensions 13 to 15, referred to as the realm of rishis, Breno, guardian founders, or simply the Orifim, entered a new territory within the void to co-create and incarnate or seed the Nebadon universe. And upon doing so, spearheaded by the 14D Ra family, or simply the Ra, imploded, sorry, I have to put this up. Lost my place. Imploded upon itself, disseminating its quanta of energy as light to set its quanta of energy into spinning, giving rise to the advent of time in the Nebadon universe, practically converting this portion of the void to a universe comprised of 12 discrete space-time dimensional structure or system within the advent of time, congealing, progressively diminishing its velocity of spin, to give rise to such a discrete dimensional system. Note that the advent of explosion-implosion also forms a mirrored form of such space-time dimensional structure as the conjugate system, symbiotically and simultaneously, and in conformance with the dualism principle of creation, that are referred to as the worlds of matter and antimatter, with the central discrete layer forming the basis of the zero-point field that describes a neural world connecting Nebadon to the neural network of God. Accordingly, the guardian fathers of Nebadon, with particular initiative of the Emerald Order, who incarnated as the white feline hominid avatar Anahazi species on the 12th dimension, formed the predecessors to the current human race who were destined to be the link to the God source. Accordingly, upon the demise of the first angelic forms of humans on the 12D Aramentania Lyra by the negative aliens, they proceeded to create the monadic form of humans on 7D Gaia, as this race was also annihilated by the negative aliens later. They finally seeded the angelic humans as a Turanurism prototype of the 12D crystalline silicate-based DNA on 5D Terra. As the negative aliens also triggered the fall of Terra by causing the explosion of its core and consciousness grid to fall into pieces within the lower 3 dimensions through the initiative of the Paleodorian guardian founders, and the consciousness pieces of humans were gathered as to create our present form within a morphogenic field that is commensurate with functioning within these lower frequential light quotient dimensions of Nebadon that we call Earth. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry I was covering my face. I won't do that anymore. Introduction. Trinity, principle of creation. Creation is governed by the Trinity principle of the Godhead. And creation of our Nebadon universe follows the same rule and pattern. The Godhead epitomizes the light of consciousness, a crystalline, coherent, intelligible form of energy that the God source disseminates all over its body of consciousness that we refer to as the cosmos or the prime creator. Accordingly, the light of consciousness gets fragmented into smaller packets of light that each represent an offspring as the self-similar fractalized holographic aspect of the God source. At that level of consciousness, indigenous to our Nebadon universe, the Trinity aspect of the Godhead is expressed as the amethyst, the gold, and emerald orders. In this respect, the gold order describes the neutrality of the quanta of consciousness energy of the Godhead that at the fundamental level splits into its so-called male and female principles of the amethyst and the emerald orders, respectively. The electromagnetic cosmos or universe. The expanding away and contracting back towards the central God source aspects of the energetic fields are referred to as the electric and magnetic energies, respectively. And in this respect, the male electric may be classified as transmitter and the female magnetic as the receiver of energies. Thus, in essence, the light of consciousness represents a form of electromagnetic energy that epitomizes a resultant of 2 symbiotically created electric and magnetic fields that are formed simultaneously. In this respect, the electric and magnetic, Accordingly, the direction of the propagation of the resultant electromagnetic field composed of the electric and magnetic fields is along the mutual intersection between the 2 planes in which the magnetic and energetic fields propagate. Furthermore, by virtue of the 2 simultaneously symbolically occurring electro and magnetic fields that are mutually perpendicular to each other, this phenomenon may be referred to as the orthogonality principle of creation. Accordingly, everything sequentially expands away and subsequently contracts back to the God source and vice versa. Torsional vibration. The aspects of an object or entity sequentially spiraling back and forth, oscillating about a central source and the point of equilibrium and the support that is the Godhead describes the phenomenon of torsional vibration. In this respect, a consciousness entity sequentially torsionally vibrates back and forth about the source, spiraling out and in through the spinning of its consciousness quanta of energy in an equal interval of expansion contraction. Accordingly, having equal interval of expansion contraction upon contraction to the source has a chance to revitalize its energies from the source. This way, the energy moves in an open loop of free energy between the sentient being and the source. Furthermore, this is the line with the conservation of free energy within the cosmos that the author has proposed to alternatively stipulated as what expands away from the source must contract back to the source. Creation of the Nebadon universe. With the reference to creation of the Nebadon universe, the neutral gold order pertains to the family of light beings referred to as the Ra Confederacy or Ra. And It is the Ra that jump-started the creation of Nebadon, the Nebadon Universe. Accordingly, at the most fundamental stage of creation of the Nebadon Universe, Ra enters what was initially void as a central sun and sequentially implodes upon itself to form what appears as two suns as a system of a sun behind a sun. This gives rise to the advent of two suns capable of disseminating their quanta of energy, of light energy into the void, converting it into the Nebadon universe as a new God's world. In this respect, when viewed from either side, the front sun appears as a system of a white hole disseminating and expanding the light of consciousness into the newly forming Nebadon universe. Similarly, the sun behind simultaneously expands away, disseminating its quanta of conscious energy as rays of light into its own domain as a system of infinitesimal white holes. It was infinitesimal white holes. Yet when observed from either side, the front sun appears as a giant white hole, while the sun behind resembles a black hole that devours the quantity of energy into its wake. And the combination of both suns represents the energetic of Ra that, in essence, epitomizes a source of neutrality by the virtue of assigning sign to one electric field as positive and other as negative, positioned on both sides of the central neutral sun. It epitomizes the 0-point energy field. The dimensional aspects of the Nebadon universe. The explosion-implosion of the central neutral sun Ra as the 0-point field sets the quanta of consciousness energy of light into a bidirectional spinning. This gives rise to the advent of inception of time within two conjugate mirror domains. As the quanta of energy expand away from the central source, they undergo a progressive congealing by way of losing their quantum velocity of spin and light quotient. According to the dualism principle of creation, the act of explosion-implosion creates a symbiotic sequence of expansion-contraction of the quanta of energy about the source. This gives rise to the spiraling about a bidirectional vector of time. Sorry about that. This gives rise to the bidirectional vector of time. The sequential spiraling of quanta of energy, their expansion contraction epitomizes the act of torsional vibration. The tensorial mathematical description of the problem entails solution to an eigenvalue problem involving discrete set of parameters that describe the vibration within a matrix of time. What this means is that the quanta of energy settle down, congealing at discrete intervals into contours of energy that actually represent the condition of 0-point energy that epitomizes being on a path on the neural network of the God source. Accordingly, consciousness quanta of energy anchor themselves to such congealed fabrics of what is commonly known as space-time dimensions. Accordingly, a dimension has two features, space and time. While time epitomizes the very act of free spinning of the quanta of energy, space represents their congealment to form such a discrete number of contours of energy within a characteristic curvatures. In other words, the congealed quanta of energy form the fabric of certain space-times that essentially represent the converted version of a portion of the void to establish a God's world in which the consciousness quanta of solar consciousness, sentient beings, could vibrate in time, epitomizing what we commonly refer to as organic life. Accordingly, space refers to the surface area of such contours of energy, even distributed about the 0-point field with their conjugate mirrored aspects of matter, antimatter, respectively and sequentially spinning counterclockwise, clockwise, and vice versa. And the concept of time is reflected in the curvature of the central neutral layer of such typical contour of energy that is actually inverse proportional to the radius of the spherical domain it generates. Alternatively, the rate of progression of time within a space-time dimension is measured by the velocity of spin of the said quantum energies, which is reflective of the curvature of the contour of the energy, a concept that is also depicted by the frequency of consciousness waves of energy, epitomizing the state of consciousness within such a dimension. Thus, it goes to say that the radius of the curvature of the space-time is measured through the first differential of the angle of the spinning of the quanta of energy with respect to time, simply to the velocity or rate of spinning of the quanta of energy. Thus, no matter how you look at it, whether considered as a rate of progression of time, quantum speed, curvature of space-time, frequency of the simple harmonic waves of consciousness, or even the radius of curvature, they may be taken as to represent the eigenvalues, the only values in question in the tensorial mathematical problem, giving them a quality of discreteness rather than being a continuous function. Although within the context of vibrational or wave mechanics, it is most customary to use the concept of frequency. Another candidate would be the extent of light quotient, ratio of light intensity as compared to that of the progenitor source, or the color of the ray on the quantitative basis as another candidate for discrete eigenvalues. Note that each dimension is associated with and accordingly characterized through the projection of a certain ray of light of unique frequency, color, and light quotient that makes up the ray aspect of the dimensions. Furthermore, through the progressive congealment and as proposed by the author, a discrete set of nested spherical domains are formed that represent the dimensional aspect of the universe, with the inner dimensions possessing progressively higher curvatures and thus frequency-like quotient of consciousness, while at the same time associated with having less constitutive density of matter, antimatter, and vice versa. As this forms the basis for the cosmological law of consciousness constitution interaction proposed by the author that stipulates that constitution, matter or antimatter, retards the state of consciousness. Strictly speaking, a total of 356 discrete non-singular dimensions of space-time of varying constitutive fabrics may be identified within the cosmos. Each of these dimensions are formed through projection of ray of light in its particular quanta of electromagnetic energy of a characteristic frequency of vibration, light, quotient, color. As these rays are projected from the central source, they progressively lose their frequency and light quotient, a phenomenon that the author has referred to as energetic congealment. As a portion of the quanta of energy of light congeal their frequency, arranging themselves into a series of spherical contours of energy perceived to be as a neural network of the God source or zero-point energy field. Upon these, certain other free-flowing spinning quanta of energy can anchor their consciousness that is referred to as time. The congealed quanta of energy form the basis of the fabric of space-time that may just exist as retarded quanta of energy with diminished velocity of quantum spin or frequency. And as the particles of matter, antimatter, of the antimatter giving rise to two conjugate mirrored space-time or coalesce, clump, and bond with one another to form a continuous mass in the lower dimensions. In particular, the last two scenarios describe the condition of our Nebadon universe. Note that our Nebadon universe practically exists at the edge of the cosmos and is therefore among the densest realms possible. Accordingly, as the quanta of energy of light of consciousness of Ra are projected into the void to form the dimensional structure of the Nebadon universe, they congeal to form 12 main dimensions of increasing density and lower level consciousness as we approach from the center of the universe to its periphery. Accordingly, there are 12 distinct rays of unique colors, frequencies, and light quotants that make up the dimensional ray aspect of our universe, with more inner dimensions being associated with progressively more frequency light quotient of consciousness and less density. And as we approach the inner or higher dimensions, the constitutive density of the embodied consciousness beings diminishes, letting more light of consciousness or illuminates in, reflected of the entity's higher enlightenment. For example, in terms of a density, a 5D human weighs 20% of what she would weigh as a comparable 3D being. At the same time, dark matter core manifestation body becomes much more ordered and crystalline at higher dimensions. And when you reach a state of avatar being, your constitution decreases tremendously, practically existing as a silhouette or vibration sheets of light, capable of instantly shape-shifting into anything you desire. Note that the dimensions of the cosmos, accordingly the Nebadon Universe, can be categorized as odd and even dimensions. In this respect, the odd dimensions of the universe can be construed as being worlds of matter and the even ones as worlds of antimatter. And to go from a world of matter to antimatter towards the center of the cosmos, one must first bring the velocity of quantum spin of the particles to a halt, and thus reaching the 0-point field, and then again accelerate them in opposite directions to reach their frequency. Accordingly, with the quantum of energy being evenly distributed between the worlds of matter and antimatter, one must double the frequency as one goes from an odd to an even dimension towards the center of the universe. Conversely, when one goes from an even to an odd dimension towards the outer part of the universe, one must reduce the velocity of quantum spin or frequency to half its previous value. The natural frequency of the vibration of 3D Earth is often measured through what is referred to as the Schumann resonance that is attributed to its magnetosphere that is perceived at its light body aura, which ordinarily equates to 7.83 hertz. Of course, we are on the path of ascension. The natural frequency of the vibration of Earth has been increasing, transmigrating us to the fourth and towards higher dimensions. Let us, for the sake of argument, approximate this Schumann resonance of the 3D Earth to reflect 8 hertz. Accordingly, the inner space between the central layers, the 0-point field of the 3D Earth, and the halfway mark to the central layer of the second dimension, the outer space, may be perceived as the world of matter. Similarly, inner space between the central layer 0-point field of the 3D Earth and halfway mark the central layer of the fourth dimension inner space to be perceived as the world of antimatter. And strictly speaking, through the cosmological frequency associated with a particular dimension does not numerically change in an absolute sense of value between the world of matter and antimatter. As it has been elucidated by the author in the past, various worlds of matter and antimatter existing at a change of phase angle and quantum spin with respect to one another can be viewed as to have an apparent quantum spin frequency with respect to one another, conceptually putting them somewhere between the central point of the 0-point field and the midway towards the next dimension. Note that strictly speaking, the contours of energy, space-time, may be surmised to exist with radii of curvature in a range between the central layer of a dimension and halfway towards the next dimension in outer space, the lower dimension, and inner space, the higher dimension. Accordingly, omni-Earths can conceptually exist between the natural frequencies of 6 to 12 hertz. Note that according to the halfway rule, stipulating that the frequency of the next lower dimension diminishes to half as one goes to the outer part of the universe, or conversely doubles as one moves to the next higher dimension inside, the second dimensional frequency of the Earth may be approximated to be 4 hertz. Which is half of 8, and the fourth dimensional frequency inside could be doubled to 16 hertz. Note, however, that strictly speaking, neither the curvature of space-time nor the absolute value of cosmological frequency changes within the worlds of matter and antimatter. This forms the basis for the cosmological law that the author has referred to as the fundamental essential law of spatial cohabitation, stipulating that different parallel anti-parallel dimensions can occupy the very same space, yet have a different scheme of time progression within them. Thus, clearly, a human being can operate within the frequency range of 6 to 12 hertz, projecting his consciousness, jumping back and forth between the worlds of matter and antimatter of the omni-earths. Accordingly, one might visualize itself as being attached via an elastic spring anchored and supported by the central layer that epitomized being on the path of the neural network of God and within the 0-point field and expanding into living and vibrating the worlds of matter and antimatter. Take a small break.
Absolutely. Beautifully done. I've been listening to you, walking.
Good. I just want to, not just a small break. I want to say the word congealed. I looked it up and it means to solidify. Mm-hmm. Is that a good substitute for it? Yeah, but I use there is no other word the way that I want to use it. Mm-hmm. So I have basically sort of invented or referred to energetic congealment. Okay? In other words, the frequency becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. It became the quanta of energy, okay? They become denser and denser and denser. And if they get to a point that they can coalesce with each other, they form particles of matter, antiparticles of antimatter, and then it gives rise to physicality. And of course, we're talking in the Nebadon universe, especially the first 9 dimensions, we have solidity. We have what's the word that I want to say? That is tangible? Tangible, yes. That it's tangible to basically think of something existing, okay? It's not just pure plasma energy free flowing all over, okay? So anyway, congealment in the extreme sense becomes solidification. But liquid is less congealed, okay? Gas is less congealed. And when it comes to plasma, it becomes even less congealed. And then there are degrees of less congealment of plasma, which means they are really, really free to openly go all around. And you don't get any kind of physicality, any tangible, tangibility of existence, okay? Are you with me? So I am. It's not a new word, but it's a new way of using the word for me. So
yeah, you always think about congealed as if everything. Think about the easiest way to imagine this is think about volcanic activities. Okay, and you see the lava coming down and solidifies little by little by little and becomes stone. It becomes solid rock, right?
Becomes matter.
Well, it is matter even when
that's
it
comes
true. Out because it's gas and then liquid and then it becomes solid. The thing is that that physicists or scientists don't classify in here is really the state of plasma. Okay, which plasma is even thinner, more diluted than gas. You see what I'm saying? You're getting into quanta now. You're going from molecules to atoms to subatomic and all this stuff, and then you're getting into quanta of energy. Now the quanta of energy is just, you can't fathom that in your mind. It's so small, and it can freely go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? When you say quanta of energy itself. I use the term quanta of energy, and then as you go from inner to outer part of the cosmos, it starts congealing. it's a stepwise. It is a stepwise congealing. Just like, as I said, when you see the volcanic rock, it comes, you don't have rock. You have the liquid, you have, and then gas, it's the same sort of phenomenon that you can...
Transformation of matter. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to just clarify is the word discrete, because you turn it into lots of verbs that are hard for me to say. Discretized, discretization. It always means separating things into individual lines of flow. Is that a good way to think of it?
Exactly.
You've got a ball of something, and to discretize it is to take the different pieces in that ball and separate it out into its elements that are going to be separate and no longer the ball.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Think about something that's continuous. Either it's a piece of rod or a beam or you want ball. And then you start chopping it up into little pieces. You're discrete
things.
Because one becomes a discrete part of the whole. So if the whole is continuous, this is a discrete. And here's what it is. You have the cosmos. God itself is one entity. And it's continuous, really. And it's continuously vibrating, if you want to think about it. Okay? When the quanta of energy start this, when it disseminates the quanta of energy, they become discrete. Now you get discrete, right? So then they start settling down at this contour, that contour, and that contour, and each contour becomes a dimension. It has the surface where the congealment takes place, that we call it space. It provides a means for containment. You can contain something, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And time is free-flowing. The quanta of energy just spin. You know what I'm saying? And in fact, our whole consciousness, the sense of organic being, organic consciousness, is that we have quanta of energy, which are our God particles, the smallest quanta or constituent part of us, right? And they're constantly spinning about a line that connects you to God. And I call that the cosmological bivector of time. I call it bivector because it can expand and it can contract. It can expand and it can contract. So in other words, the quanta of energy spin about this line. When they go counterclockwise, they expand. They move away from the central position of God, okay? When they go, and that's actually, if you want to know that, that's electric energy, okay? And if they go clockwise, they go towards the center, they spiral about the same line, but in a clockwise manner, but they contract, they get you contract towards God. And I have also introduced, I don't know if you had it in there, the term propinquity, which really defines your distance from God. I mean, it is all abstract, you know what I'm saying? So the closer that you get to God, the more potent are your energies, the more higher is your consciousness, which means your intelligence, abilities, everything like that. And as you go away, these energy partly congeal, eventually give rise to matter and antimatter. But even, see, I have talked about, I'm 100% the only person on the planet who said that. There's 356 dimensions, okay? Not 12 dimensions. 356 dimensions. Now, up to 84 dimensions, all you get is plasma energy. They can't congeal enough to form particulate of something. You know what I'm saying? So you don't get matter or antimatter. you get quanta of energy spinning this way or that way. And the closer you go to God, they spin faster and faster and faster. You go away from God, they get slower, slower, slower. But when they get to the dimension 81st, and tensorially, you can show that, you get to the dimension 81st, that's the first type of congealment that you're thinking about, that basically you form particles of matter and antimatter. And the way I have divided that into 7 domains of 12, that's 84 dimensions, which is basically the 81 that I told you, plus a 3, which is just outside and look inside. Just like we have the rishis that are in dimension 13, 14, 15, looking into 12 and down, right? So you get 7 higher heavens. And then, of course, this particular paper only addresses Nebadon Universe. Now, Nebadon Universe is in the first super universe, which is called actually Orvanton. You know what I'm saying? And it's at the edge of the cosmos. So that means density is the highest, matter, antimatter exists. That's why we got physicality. And that's why we come in here to have an experience in space-time and congealing into form. So we have bodies, we can walk, you know what I'm saying? And do all this kind of stuff. Now, one thing that they don't tell you, even the Guardian founders don't tell you, is that there are 7 higher heavens. And when you go, it's similar kind of things, except there are different types of elements there. They're lighter. They spin faster. They're brighter. There's more light. There's more consciousness. So as you go from this series of universe to next, as you go to God, you get higher consciousness. You get less density. You get faster rotation. Are you with me? And you
Yeah.
get,
Oh yeah. No, I love it. The big thing for me is that the levels of consciousness in the nested spheres are separate from the fabric of the space-time vector.
the fabric of the space-time is basically what fills that void. You know what I'm saying? That gives it a texture. And Einstein started talking about this actually, but he could only talk about the 3 dimensions. And he considered the next 4th dimension as time, which is incorrect. Every dimension is formed through time. He didn't understand that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, I do now, especially because of this paper. I've read it many times. And even now, as it's just kind of flowing out of my mouth, things are congealing in my brain.
Well, one thing I want to tell you, Kate, that just to correct you.
Please.
You were talking, no, this is very actually legitimate. You were talking eigenvalue. Now,
Yep.
eigen is eigen, and eigen comes from German. It means
right. I meant to ask that earlier. Eigen, got it.
Only. Now, allow me to explain that, because I said that in a lot of places. Eigenvalue means only value, okay? So what it means is that if you look at a series of numbers, they exist at this, and then there's nothing, and then there's something else. So they're discrete. And that's how those dimensional frequencies are. You may get, we talked about it, you may get 4 hertz, then you get 8 hertz, then 16, then you get 32, then you get 64. You know what I'm saying? They're discrete. Between it, nothing exists. That's eigenvalue. So that means mathematically, when you solve the equation, you don't get a function of a continuous function. Because if I tell you, excuse me, if I tell you sine x, or if I tell you logarithmic of x, or whatever function you like, let's just say x itself can be a function. Y equals x is a function. It's a line, right? But once you do this, you say x, and any value of x you give, y has a different value. Let's say y equals 3x. So you give x1, y becomes 3. But give x2 becomes et cetera, et cetera. It's continuous. Now, even if you give x equal 0.000001, y has a corresponding number, 3 times 0.0001, right? That's a continuous function. When you plot that, it's a curve. It's a continuous curve, okay? Now, when you have discrete function, it doesn't have all those points. It has only the eigenvalues. So it's boom here, boom here, boom here. Between it's nothing. You have to stepwise connect them by lines. There's nothing between them. And that's exactly the nature of the, what I call discrete cosmological dimensions, which I've proven there are 356 of them mathematically. Okay, now.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Now listen, between those, you could have fractal dimensions, but that's entirely a different issue. With fractal dimensions, you have to go to parallel systems. And what you're actually doing is that you define a phase angle. So you're saying, I'm getting spinning about this, okay? And then you give it a phase angle of 2 degrees apart. But same kind of spinning, same speed there. Now you would think that should be the same dimension because it has the same velocity, right? The same speed. No, there are 2 different ones because there's a phase angle between them. Because the timeline is different. That's why you talk about timeline, changing timeline.
So phase angle is really important to where it lands in time.
Parallel dimensions, local time.
Okay.
Yes.
And could we say phase angle is like the blinds on a window changing there? I mean, they're not moving, so that's not a good, but it's, you know, you have something moving already, and then all of a sudden it points in a different direction, right? Phase angle?
Yeah, Kate, I know exactly what you're getting at. It's hard to express it. You're thinking about diffraction.
Okay.
And refraction of light, right? Because the light comes through it, and if they move a little bit, they refract the light differently. Yes, it's exactly the same concept.
Really?
Everything is light.
Oh.
Light is electric and magnetic fields. Electric fields goes this way, magnetic is perpendicular way. And if you add these 2 vectorially, you get the diagonal of that rectangle that he would have created.
Right.
It becomes the, mathematically.
Mm-hmm.
Light is electromagnetic, means it has electric aspect and magnetic aspect. And light is neutral. It has no mass, also it's neutral. That's why you always associate God with light, because God is the purest form of anything you can imagine, doesn't have any constitution, matter, antimatter, or any constitution whatsoever. And it is infinite light, which means if you think of the God particles, they are moving at infinite velocity. Okay? But God breaks apart, discretizes. And then we sentient people like you and me created. And we have a fraction of its frequency. We have fraction of its, we call it light quotient. Light quotient means division. So that means your light divided by God's light. What percentage it is? 0.00001. I mean, God is God. That's why it's the most magnificent entity, anything you could imagine. You can fall in love with God, and that's the true love.
Well, I do feel that when I get done meditating, while I'm meditating, and when I get done meditating, which I do based upon reading your stuff on the chakra system and other realities, and it really is amazing how when you get a little bit of movement in your frequency to rise, you feel nothing but love and thanks. It's like that's all that exists there.
You know, you've heard about everything exists in the vernacular, in the language. You've heard about uplifting.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is. That's what you hear about enlightenment. Enlightenment means getting more light. Uplifting means going higher up.
Levity.
Up is not like heaven is up there. I mean, I don't even think that's all religious nonsense, okay? It means your frequency is going higher. Your light quotient is going higher. You're going towards something that is higher.
But it only comes through balance and through honest 0 point balancing.
Absolutely.
You know, that there's sort of a thing that people do where they think, oh, I want more high end, so I'll just pour on some higher frequency and that'll do it. And that is not how it happens at all. So, all right. Well, I would love to talk to you rather than read this paper, but we should probably continue on here.
Go ahead, please.
All right, so we're in the middle of this here. Yep, exactly the middle. The holographic nature, 3D or volumetric aspects of the universe. In the context of continuum mechanics, we often speak of Euclidean space described through specification of three mutually independent yet orthogonal unit vectors that make the coordinate systems of a system that, in fact, is volumetric nature, e.g. length, breadth, width, height, depth, you know, the way we measure something to go to Menards and get the dimensions. However, in reality, space is a curved 2D planar phenomenon composed by two coordinates that at any point may be represented by the two unit vectors being tangent to a surface, longitude, latitude. Furthermore, even these two vectors can be visualized as to combine, giving rise to a singular resultant vector that is tangent to the surface, depicting a space vector. Indeed, the third coordinate is a unit vector that acts along the radius of a curvature at such an arbitrary point, which in fact epitomizes the measure of time. Thus, a curved plane is resulted with certain characteristic curvature equal to the inverse of the radius, 1r, that describes a particular dimension. A dimension may be described by a phenomenon, space and time, that is collectively referred to as space-time, having two characteristic features: its surface that describes its spatial space aspect, and its curvature that epitomizes its temporal time aspect. Accordingly, a dimension is also referred to as a dimension of time, having a characteristic timeline, an axis about which the free-flowing quanta of energy can sequentially spiral out and spiral in, which is referred to as torsional sentient vibration or torsional consciousness vibration. And as a sentient being often anchors its coherent, intelligible quanta of free energy referred to as consciousness to the neutral central layer of such a domain, the 0 point field, vibrating in time, thus it is referred to as the dimension of consciousness. Thus it is clear that the concepts of time and consciousness are intimately interrelated. In particular, consciousness epitomizes a vibrating wave with certain characteristic frequency, which is commensurate with the curvature of space-time dimension at which it is anchored. Note that contrary to the concept of linear time on how the dimensional domain of Earth, when one speaks of a cosmological time, one refers to a way time propagates within the domain. When viewed locally, time being a torsional phenomenon, it is described by a vector, tensor of order 1, describable by 3 coordinates or measures, that has both a magnitude and a direction associated with it. The most characteristic feature of the main or cosmological dimension is the rate with which time propagates within a dimension. Let me read that again. The most characteristic feature of a main or cosmological dimension is the rate at which time propagates within the dimension. And its magnitude refers to the velocity of spinning of the fundamental quanta of energy, velocity of quantum spin, that is also commensurate with the concept of frequency, and at the same time determines the curvature of the space-time dimension. Furthermore, the orientational or rotational direction of the vector of time describes the unique characteristic of a particular space-time dimension. In other words, by rotating the vector of time globally, one can define different space-time dimensions. This is equivalent to saying, to find the focus of all space-time dimensions, one needs to discretize the vector of time, just what we were talking about. And as the phenomenon of time epitomizes spinning of the quanta of energy, thus it is governed by the angle of the spin that the quanta of energy subtend about the vector of time. And thus, ultimately, to discretize time, one must discretize the angle of spin. Furthermore, remember that time is described by a bivector that gives rise to simultaneous symbiotic formations of the conjugate mirrored spacetimes. And considering the congealed fabric of such spacetimes, this refers to myriad worlds of matter and antimatter coexisting symbiotically and simultaneously with respect to one another. Together within a world existing within the zero-point field that forms a neutral world composed of both matter and antimatter, this gives rise to a tri-union of universes composed of a world of matter, world of antimatter, and the in-between or neutral world composed of both matter and antimatter. So consciousness is ultimately a torsional vibration phenomenon with the quanta of energy described as a sentient or conscious being anchored at the central energetic contours that describe the neutral layer or the zero-point field, sequentially jumping back and forth and into and out of the worlds of matter and antimatter and vice versa. And the mathematical solution to such a vibrational problem is defined by the eigenvalue problem, whose solution renders discrete values for the frequency, curvature, or quantum spin velocity that characterizes each cosmological main space-time dimension, just what we were talking about. And again, all these dimensions are described by a curved surface of such characteristic curvatures, eigenvalues. Since the act of implosion entails isotropic dissemination of the quanta of energy, it is clear that such main or cosmological space-time dimensions as contours of energy that as a result of decreasing curvatures, increasing radiuses, epitomizes a set of nested spherical domains as was originally proposed by the author a decade ago. Thus, in order to give a consciousness observer, a sentient being, a better and more clear, lucid experience of life, the recorded pixels of reality dispersed on such a curved space-time surfaces and analogous to curved TV screens, they're made of plasma, are projected onto secondary space-time through the projection of yet a third ray of light, the holographic experience of reality come to life. Wow. Note that each space-time dimension is essentially created through projection of a specific ray of light from the source with its own characteristic of color, light quotient, and frequency. And such rays of light, each with their own characteristic frequency, light quotient, and color, represent vibrating waves that accordingly constructively interfere with one another to ultimately form a volumetric holographic image at the central layer of three consecutive rays of light. I need to read that again. And such rays of light, each with their own characteristic frequency, light quotient, and color, representing vibrating waves that accordingly constructively interfere with one another to ultimately form a volumetric holographic image at the central layer of the three consecutive rays of light. Wow, this concept forms the basis of the...
You need help?
Huh?
You need help? So I describe it very easily because you read it every time perfectly as far as the English was concerned.
Yeah.
Interpretation. Let me quickly tell you this. It's
Please.
actually, you can actually make hologram. You've seen Elvis, and you've seen Elvis on the stage, and Michael Jackson on the stage, and
yeah,
stuff.
the holographic projections of them.
I mean, of course, this is synthetic, but now we're talking real light coming from God and all this stuff. So just basically it is like this: 3 consecutive layers of dimensions. Like we say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, okay? These 3 are like this, right? So each one of these is formed by a particular ray of light of certain characteristic, color, frequency, etc., right? So you project one into this and get like a photographic film, you get its records, right? Those are the records of reality. Let's say pictures of reality, right? Then this thing that already has all that information, you get the other light, the second light, to shine into this and goes to a second plate. Okay, so now it has the record of the first one and the second one on this plate. Then you take a third light to shine it on that, and then you see, voila, this plate becomes 3-dimensional. And if you want to understand how that works, actually, you've probably seen this in those glasses where you go and watch 3D. Okay, what they do, the images are a little bit apart. They're taking at a different incident angle. You know what I'm saying? So now when you put those together, one is like this, one is like this. But when the third one you put on it, it creates like the illusion of a 3-dimensionality. So what I am saying, which, scientists I agree with this totally now, and for a while, that all the informations are at that surface of this space-time. And that's, a surface is a 2-dimension, right? A surface, if you flatten it out, it's like a plane, it's 2-dimension. But because it has a curvature, you know what I'm saying? If you take 3 of these together, you can and shine 3 lights. They're all different frequencies. First on this, get the record. Then shine the second one on the one record, get the second record. Then shine a third one on this collective record, and you see, whoa, they open up. That's how you see that the Star Wars, Obi Kenobi is coming talking to you, and it's not a flat picture that you see on TV. It has a depth. It gives you so our life is like this. We really, really receive it in 2-dimension. 3 consecutive rays come in together, and they create this holographic reality for us. And we do it all through eyes. You know what I'm saying? Through our eyes. We are like bio-computer projectors, quantum bio-computer projectors. You know what I'm saying? And you project it, and it goes to the back of our head. That's that screen. And that screen creates a 3-dimension. And I look at Kate, and I say, right now I'm looking at you, Kate, you're 2-dimensional. But if I were there, you would be 3-dimensional. Of course, because this is synthetic. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, when you look out there and see the trees and stuff like this, this is just a scheme, the way your holographic reality comes to picture, technically speaking. It is through 3 consecutive rays of light.
Does it matter the order of the color?
Yes, it does, because your chakras are like that. You know that?
Yeah.
Each one of your chakras, like you got the red, orange, green. That keeps you in the first harmonic universe.
Right.
Dimension 1, 2, 3. And then you go up the other 3, the 3 different colors, it's going to give you a different holographic image.
Yep.
When you go in there, everything's going to look different to you. Things are lighter, brighter, move faster, all this. Your reality changes. And then you go to the next one, your reality is going to change. Da, 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 you know?
Mhm.
And in fact, even after you go out of the Nebadon universe, when you go to the second higher heaven, you're going to find that things are even different there because the elements are different, the quantum speed is different, colors are different. You know what I'm saying? I would love to see what that is, you know?
Yeah, well, we're just happy flying a helicopter 10 feet on Mars, you know?
Well, be happy now that you're going to the fifth dimension to see what that is. And then you go to the seventh, ninth, and then by the time you get to the fourth harmonic universe, which is 11, 10 to 12, you become an orb of light. You know what I'm saying? You can shapeshift. You can make any shape you want. Yeah? When you become an avatar being. It's all reality, you know?
Yeah, well, you talk about that coming up here. Should I go back to it here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we just
beautifully. Just continue on. Your
okay.
English was very good. I mean, it's just that it's a concept, you have to get it, and you're trying to read it fast, you know. But holographic is just three things, 3 consecutive rays of light.
Okay, and it's also important to know holographic is the pieces containing the whole.
Well, absolutely. And even holograms, I have other papers on this. Holograms fit inside other holograms, inside other holograms.
Right. Every piece contains the whole. So, all right. So back on the issue of the holographic image at the central layer of 3 consecutive rays of light is where I left off. This concept forms the basis of microcosm and macrocosm aspects of the holographic space-time dimensions, with smaller holograms fitting inside the larger hologram. Yet one must remember the very important distinguishing caveat that consciousness-wise, akin to the characteristic frequency light quotient, the higher inner holographic dimensions contain the lower outer dimensions, which spatially speaking, the opposite is true. They both contain each other. In other words, spatially, I said that. However, in any case, note that the amount of information in the scheme of edifice or morphology of the larger hologram is always repeated and is equally contained within the smaller holograms. The 3 founder, flame, and ray of aspect of our universe. As it is indicated before, the cosmos is governed by the Trinity of the Godhead. And our universe is not an exception to this rule or design of creation. These fragments epitomize self-similar fractal holographic aspects of the Godhead that are referred to as angelic light beings. Our universe constitutes the lowest and most outer form of the consciousness of the Godhead that was co-created and seeded by a group of light beings from the dimensions 13 to 15, collectively the 5th harmonic universe. The 5th harmonic universe is referred to the domain of our Rishi Guardian founders, the Bruno or the Orphim. It is governed by the lowest aspect of the Trinity Godhead that are referred to as amethyst, emerald, and gold orders. And these respectively represent the Father, the Mother, the Son, Daughter, Christus, Sophia principles of the Godhead. At this level of consciousness, these correspond to the violet, magenta, aquamarine blue, and the gold rays, respectively, forming the 15th, 13th, and 14th dimensions of the 5th harmonic universe, respectively. Note that each cosmological space-time dimension is formed through holographic projection of a ray of light of a distinct color and frequency and light quotient. All these rays of light epitomize a form of combined electromagnetic energies that carry all 3 Trinity aspects of the Godhead. Together, they form a holographic domain that, for the purpose of a more vivid, lucid consciousness, experience and appear as 3D or volumetric. And every space-time dimension in reality epitomizes a 2D curved surface of distinct curvature. Yet, the overall projection of 3 consecutive rays of light as waves of energy of light progressively and mutually constructively interfere with one another and create the 3D holographic projection image of reality, just what you were saying. Christos Sophia angelic beings are alternatively referred to as Orphim that represent a full form of full crystalline consciousness and aspects of God. The lowest form of Orphan angelic crystalline Christos Sophia consciousness beings are human beings that were designed to function within the Nebadon universe with a total of 12D crystalline silicate-based DNA strands, 78, all fully assembled, yet with only 5 DNA strands that are already fully activated. It was envisioned that the angelic human beings composed of these 12 DNA strands chosen from among the best crystalline consciousness DNA from the 12 Orphan races would be embodied on 5D Earth, Terra, and eventually learn to activate their own remaining 7 DNA strands through the experimentation in varied space-time dimensions of the 2nd to 4th harmonic universes, experiencing the sojourns of life naturally projected onto the space-time as pixels of reality through holographic means, which would then lead to the consciousness expansion and the ascension up the steps of the 12D grid timeline matrix of the Nebadon universe. Accordingly, they will be able to serve as the guardians of the Nebadon universe, relieving the current guardian founders to eventually engage in other creational endeavors, possibly co-creating and seeding new universes. The co-creators of the Nebadon universe, the threefold flames of the Mother Arc, the Father Arc, and the Christos Sophia Arc, the Diamond Sun, forms the Trinity aspects of the Godhead. These manifest in the 5th harmonic universe as the violet magenta, the gold, and the aquamarine blue rays of the light in the 15th, 4th, and 13th dimensions, respectively. Each divine arc is composed of a conglomerate set of rays that is formed as a collective of many high dimensional, respectively the 15th, 14th, and 13th light beings that are respectively referred to as the Amethyst Order, the Gold Raw Confederacy, and Holy Emerald Order of the Godhead at this level of the Godhead's manifestation. These are collectively referred to as the Guardian Founders, Rishis or Brno, and even Oraphim, crystalline, angelic beings, the heritage they emanate from, who are the ancient master builders and architects that are stemming from the Master Crystals Collective. They are all sworn to protect the provisions of the Law of One, which provides the ascending path to the beings, God's sovereign, free individuals being able to freely evolve their consciousness and ultimately ascend out of the universal time matrix. The third emanation of the primal sound light field that represents the third individuation of the God source is the Amethyst Order, the third part of the cosmic Trinity, contributing to the threefold founder flame. The third light manifestation of the Amethyst Order are the violent rays from the 15th dimension that are compromised as Ceatician, Avian Pegasus people, aquatic Braha Rama seated in the 4th harmonic universe of Lyra Avian through the universal Stargate 11. These would primarily form aquatic forms of being within the Nebadon universe, with the Avian Pegasus soon becoming extinct. The second emanation of the primal sound field that represents the second individuation of the God source is the Gold Order, the second part of the cosmic Trinity Raw Confederacy, contributing to the threefold founder flame. The second light manifestation of the Gold Order are gold rays from the 14th dimension that are comprised of Solar Rishi, Seraph, Ra Confederacy, as well as Seraphim, Sarah's avian bird people, and the Anthium Mantis Tall Whites. Ceres avian bird people who incarnated in the 4th harmonic universe on Lyra Vega through the 10th universal Stargate. These would be comprised of the avian or winged bird-like beings and insectoids such as the white benevolent mantis beings. The first emanation of the primal sound light field that represents from the first individuation of the God source is the Holy Emerald Order, the first part of the cosmic Trinity, contributing to the three founder flame. The Emerald Order of the Elohim, seated in the Anuazi Lyrian feline Elohim humanoid races as their first lineage through the Lyrian 12th Stargate, are a Montana. The Lyrian Syrian Anuhazi feline Elohim are the creators of the angelic human race who later became extinct as a result of the negative aliens' infiltration of Lyra. They are also known as the founders of the Christos races, the Iani Grail lines that include the Orpheum and the human race. These were primarily purposed as bipedal beings dwelling on the surface and with humans epitomizing their crown jewel beings. The Emerald Order are also the founders of the interdimensional free world councils as the result of the Emerald Palladorian covenant to ensure that all souls lost in the fallen or phantom matrix are returned back to the God source. The Anhunazi, embodied as liquid light biological forms of the original Christos races in this universe in the solar logos fields of Lyra Aramentana, are the founder emanations that embody the architecture of the cosmos sovereign law of one, which includes the ancient builder templates of the God creator code. The Lyrium Elohim felines were supervised the Sirians to host the seeding of the 12-strand DNA genetics on the 5D planet Terra for human Christos race embodiment. The Trinity of the Emerald Order, Gold Order, and Amethyst Order incarnations seated in the fourth harmonic universe through the 12th, 11th, and 10th stargates in the Lyrian matrix, in respectively, Aramentana, Avion, and Vega, are known as the royal houses. Aramentana, Avion, and Vega are known as the royal houses.
Aramentana.
Aramentana. Should I go past these slides, or are we done? Or
no, the slides are, no, just show the slides, and if you can
okay.
show.
Reading, you should look at these slides because they have lovely graphics. All dimensional layers in the cosmos are interconnected building blocks of matter and antimatter that are created from positive charge, negative charge, and neutral 0-point energy potential. That was in the first part of the paper. Here's another great slide. There are 3 original primal order frequency light fields that make up the rays of our entire universal creation. Collectively, these are referred to as the 3 founders' flame. I notice he's got the gold in the middle on that graph. Next graph, the threefold founder flame is united into a single triad liquid plasma current that creates the 12D ray system, which forms the blueprint for the silicate matrix of crystalline consciousness. Oh, just a lovely graphic. And we're done.
Good, excellent.
I could go on and on. So soon we're done.
It's not too bad. This is not a very long paper. I
love the clarity about. I'm sorry.
I divided it into 4 papers. I mean, you know, different aspects of things, and so conjugate space-time.
This is a little out of left field, but you can play or pass on it. I had heard some references on the central sun that it's possible it is something called Alcyon, Alcyone from the Pleiades.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah, Alcyon. See, the suns are connected to bigger suns, But
is Alcyon the central sun?
Alcyon is the central sun in the Milky Way galaxy. Yes. And that's where 7 sisters are. And by the way, what's happening actually now, things are changing. The 7 sisters with the 7 other sons, they're having sacred marriage. And then there's going to be one big central sun, which is the sun behind sun. I think I did I wrote about this, I know that. But I think I did some slides. I'm going to check on that. If not, I'll distribute that. I have written so many different things at different times, and I have a problem bringing them together. I mean, you know, publishing them, because it takes, you've seen my papers, you can't touch them anymore. You know, it's done. I mean, I don't write to revise. I don't write to, you know, most researchers do this. They write a paper. I mean, Einstein did this. They write a paper and then but this is fact. Now, you may look at the same thing and look at it a little differently and shed more light on it, but you don't change the principles, the concepts, the things. So it's very important that I consider every paper I write like Mozart was composing a symphony or piano concerto or whatever, or any concerto. You know, it's just right. It's balanced. It's done, you know. So that's why it takes time. Otherwise, I could just, every day I could throw papers at you. I've written a lot, believe me.
Well, I just want to say, as somebody who found you about 2.5 years ago, I just started with the graphics, and that led me to, it was probably 6 months before I even tried to read a paper. And then very seldomly do I read a whole paper. You know, you've just got to let this stuff kind of wash over you in the beginning as it congeals in your, you know, and then I would say the first time I ever read a whole paper of yours was October of last year, after following you for more than 1.5 years. And I think it was this one, but anyway, you know, I'm just saying to the readers, even whether it's listening or reading, just take it in small bits. If it overwhelms you, just baby steps is the way to go. And there's no problem taking a video or a paper and a couple days to get through it in small bits. It really helps. Break it down.
Well, I think the nicest thing that's, at least I remember a few people saying this to me, is that you look at one of the papers, even if you understand 10-15%, you think you understand 10-15%, you do a lot more, because it just kind of layers at the back of your head. And maybe
let it wash over you.
You have a cup of coffee, it's like, wow, you know, and it becomes part of you. I am not here to impress you, or you know, that's why I don't even send them to international journals. I mean, they could be published just like that, or even books. You know what I'm saying? It has to become you, because it is the science of God. It is what it is. It is not sitting in there speculating, doing this, you know what I'm saying? And so if you just let it layer, like if you read this and you think you got 20%, two things that they've told me that's nice. Secondly is that if you got 20%, be very careful. If you go back and read it, you feel like it's 40% now. Or read another paper, because they're also tying together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so the key thing is that the nicest thing that I heard that said is that when you go to a paper, you want to read it again. So even you don't get discouraged and say, oh, geez, I only 10% I understood, I'm done. No, you want to go back because it pulls you in. It's just like the way I get drawn to God. You understand something and it's so pleasurable. You know what I'm saying? Enlightenment is joy. Okay? And then you want to go to it more. You want to go to it more. In fact, I'll tell you something, Kate. I am one of the most notorious people who gets bored at the drop of a hat. You know what I'm saying? It has to be new and stuff. So that's why enlightenment is so joyful to me. You want some more, you want more. But
it's contagious.
You do it but this is whole life. Your whole life is consciousness expansion. You only have one directive by God. God gave you everything else. One directive: expand your consciousness. In fact, I give you your consciousness, God says, you expand it. I'm not going to expand it for you. It's all facilitated for you. That becomes career of life. It becomes a spiritual career. Instead of going chasing buck or ego, they're the most emptiest people who are billionaires and all this stuff. And they get trashier and trashier because that is from a negative alien, anti-life, anti-God, anti-consciousness point of view. Everything is reversed. Light has become dark. Love has become hate, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'm saying, I think you can just get drawn to it and enjoy it and have fun. And you know what? It is happening. It is happening with our group. I'm so delighted to see this. I used to struggle to get people to read my papers. Struggle. But I went to all kinds of slides and this to bring them and say, hey, hey. And then they see it and they see it in the paper. And you know what I'm saying? It just little. So we were in a very good shape. I think this program, the good thing about this is that it draws people to read. First of all, a person such as yourself, who is the, reciter, you want to go and read more papers now. You said 2-3 years ago you didn't do that. I bet now you want to go and read. You just read part 3, by the way. I hope you're going to come and do part 1, 2, and 4 too.
Okay.
Or we have to give it to somebody else. You're very, very articulate. You speak very nicely. I really like the way you read. You know what I'm saying?
Well, thank you.
And it's very, very clear. A lot of people like to listen to this when they're driving and
Right.
going to
Just let it wash over you, the sound of someone else's voice. It's a great idea. I'm so glad to use some of my talents to on material like this. I used to work in advertising, and I can tell you how depressing that was. This nourishing, very nourishing.
Anything with chasing money and ego,
right?
Useless. It's useless use of your spirit.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, my
the
dear.
Opportunity.
I hope all the questions are answered. There's nothing, right?
Yep. Well, for today, I think I could go on and on, but we'll cut it here and to be continued.
Very good. And then, so if you want to read these, well, let me know, because there are other people who request to read the same papers. In fact, I know this group has, but I'd like one person to read a series.
Okay. I will. No problem.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, Kate.
We'll talk soon.
Thank you, my dear. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.